We can speak to several analysts to get reaction to what President Cyril Ramaphosa had to say. Much of what we've heard before, job creation, fighting crime, basic services for South Africans, key points for the ANC in this manifesto launch. So we have Prince Mashele, political analyst, as well as Susan Booysen, author and political analyst, and Tabane, who, of course, is the anchor of Power to Truth on eNCA, as well as an analyst. I'll start with you because I heard you tell Sally earlier you'll fall off the chair if you heard anything new. You're standing. What does that mean?
Well, I didn't want to fall off my chair, so I decided not to have a chair. But there was really no need to fall off any chair because there was absolutely nothing. I can tell you the only slightly new thing is because he had to talk about COVID, to say because there was no COVID in 2016, right? But other than that, it's exactly a cut and paste of the previous ANC, at least the last one of 2016, Shahan. As I was saying to Sally earlier on, I glanced through that manifesto in preparation for today. And up front in that manifesto, there were 5 promises that were made there. And just to touch on the highlights, accountability. And the president started with that. You talked a lot about corruption. Lots of promises about people being arrested. And we know that very few people have been convicted. If anything, a lot of people are getting out with murder. So that promise of 2016 was repeated today. Then there's an issue about water and electricity. In the previous manifesto, they showed that in the period ahead of 2016, there were 2 million people more who were given water, right? And I think there were 2 more million people who were electrified, etc. But it's the quality of those services. The ANC's launches manifesto in Tswana. Just a stone's throw from that church square, which is a place called Hammanskraal, next to a place where I grew up. Water there has been dirty for years when the ANC has been in charge. When the mayoral candidate of the ANC was here, I think it was 2 weeks ago, they said that in 6 months they'll sort out the water in Hammanskraal. Why must I believe them? When they failed to sort it out, when they were in charge for 15 years. Now when they are going to be in charge for 6 months, they say they'll fix. So that's the second big promise. Water, electricity, they repeat it as a slogan, but the quality of the water that we are talking about and its inconsistency. The president mentioned it. People in Lodiam and so on must be laughing. They were without water for some 2-3 weeks, right? And then you've got electricity, which is we have an unreliable supply, right? To a point where some municipalities, notably the ones led by the DA, like the one in Stellenbosch, decided that they should just be off the grid as part of a plan. They must forget about ESCOM and its disorganization and just be off the grid and just basically just detach. I mean, we know the Western Cape wants to detach anyway from the country. But nevertheless, it's a frustration of saying, oh, we've electrified so many homes, and then you have a situation like we saw last week in Alexander, right, where people have taken up the illegal issue of connecting themselves, and then City Power goes and disconnects them without giving them alternative source of electricity. So if you just look at just those 2 promises, then you've got the promise of jobs. I mean, this must irritate a lot of young people, right, who are miling the streets of these municipalities and so on. 44% of unemployment. You cannot spin that, right? You can just simply accept this is total failure of the government, and these elections are not going to make it any different. Then lastly, Shahan, so I can give the others a chance. Then you've got a raft of issues that have got nothing to do with local government to show how desperate times the ANC is in. The ANC is in a corner. It has to grab at any straw, right, to try and say, please vote for us, give us another chance. And so they're talking about land. I mean, they have not done a thing about land. It's under this government where people have been removed, right, from their dwellings, even during COVID, where they passed a law that says people shouldn't be removed from abodes during COVID. They removed them. COVID is still on. The disaster management is not ended. And the same government that tells you, no, we're going to have beautiful land and give you, and they have all sorts of statistics that make no sense to people who have been removed from the land. So in summary, Shahan, I think that this is grabbing at straws. This is a repetition of the 2016 manifesto. And if you look at the pledges, this is, if you want to know you know, how hopeless this whole situation is, you must go and read the last part of the manifesto, which is called our pledge. They pledge all sorts of things that haven't happened over the last 27 years. They pledge services promptly and consistently, right? All you have to do is to go and Google protest capital of the world and see how many service delivery protests happen that show you that this pledge is, to put it politely, a lie, right? Yeah. In terms of consistency of service. And many other pledges that reflect the things that I've been saying. So in general terms, I think that the ANC is truly desperate. It's in a corner. And frankly, I'm trying to find anything positive that can come out of what is supposed to be a manifesto, which is a program for the future, which cannot be done without giving a report back. The last thing is that the speech of the president did not have an element of report back. To say, in 2016, we promised to X. We have now done Y. Or we have not done it because of X. I think that element was missing. There was more enthusiasm to rush and say, we're pledging to be better, to do better. Yeah. People want to know whether or not we can take your promises seriously, Shahan.
Yeah. All right, JJ, but, you know, just to play devil's advocate, and I know that the president mentioned a couple of things to make people happy. And for one of them would be that they've managed to do, what, redistribute 8 million hectares of land. So as far as he's concerned, they've made some strides in that regard. He also, and I would say it's laughable, mentioned that they managed to create almost 1 million job opportunities. Yeah. Yet our unemployment rate stands at 34.4%, 12 million people unemployed, right? Yeah. So with those facts in mind, Susan, I'm going to bring you in because JJ's listed a whole lot of points that are very negative and hopeless. Have you found anything positive from what the president had to say?
Well, one can certainly identify lots of positive imagery that has been used. Yes, indeed. And, you know, because of the party that's really said to be renewing itself, because so much of the believability of the ANC campaign will depend on whether people actually voters buy into that message or not. Is this really a new ANC? Is it transforming itself? Has it got a handle on those stronger state institutions that President RAMAPHOSA reported on? And can those make a real difference? The imagery in the speech, that no doubt the president was strong on promoting that. But still, even if one can say those images were strong, the overall believability of this campaign message, that will depend on whether people really want to believe the president, whether they truly in their hearts ANC supporters. I guess those people would find this speech and this orientation quite inspirational. However, the limits are really, really very evident. And there was an undoubted focus on poor people seeing the chain of child development into education and the first graduate in the family, that whole imagery there. And the RAMAPHOSA message that now is the chance to bring those national types of progress into the local. Just do that magical ANC vote. That was the message there. But yet, as JJ also said, very few people indicated, very few people would just feel absolutely free to embrace this and run with it and believe that this time around things are really going to be different. Even the slogan is very, very similar. And JJ, we needn't even just go back to 2016. We can go back to 2000 since the local elections there. Each and every one of these elections, local elections, have been driven by ANC slogans of building communities and doing it together. And tonight we also see building better communities together. All those words have been there, exactly those kind of formulations before. So it will really depend very seriously on people, whether people are reliable, loyal ANC supporters. They will find much in this message. I doubt whether it will convince new people to come and vote ANC, I doubt whether much conversion on the electoral front could be driven by the speech, because the credibility gaps between positive words and experience on the grounds, that is just wide.
Yeah. Prince, I've also read the Studies in Poverty and Inequality Institute's report on the messaging that the ANC put out for years now when it comes to promises to its constituents for local government elections. They agree with Susan and JJ that it's been much of the same. What do you reckon after tonight's address by Cyril Ramaphosa? Are you at all amazed by anything we've heard, anything new, anything promising in what he said?
Nothing new and nothing promising. The essence of the ANC president's message is this: we have made mistakes and will do better. That's the summary of what he said tonight. The question is, must South Africans believe him? And how do you answer such a question? It's not complicated to answer it. If you live in Ekurhuleni, in an informal settlement called Ivory Park, I was there last week. It's a total mess. And that metro is governed by the ANC. If you live in Brakpan, in Springs, in Germiston, in Benoni, the ANC has ghettoized the city centers and all the towns it runs in that metro. You can get out of that metro and go to small towns across South Africa. The city centers run by the ANC have been ghettoized. So people know that they cannot trust the ANC. So it was very difficult for the president. He actually brought in things that he thinks his government is doing at a national level in order to confuse voters, because voters are looking at where they live and they can see that things are bad where the ANC is governing. In fact, the president even promised that the ANC this time around is going to have more competent councillors, but he doesn't tell us where he's going to get these competent councillors, because the councillors of the ANC across the country, I mean, anybody who knows the councillors of the ANC at local government level, they are incompetent. I don't know how the ANC suddenly is going to manufacture competent councillors. He even lied, for example, said that the ANC is the only party that involved communities in selecting its ward councillors. It's a lie. Action SA, him and Mashele's new party, involved local communities in selecting its ward councillors. In fact, that was the first party to do it. The ANC followed Action SA. But of course, South Africans know that the president was lying. So in summary, this was a desperate attempt by a president who is presiding over a massive disaster called the African National Congress, to try and spin it and reproject it as if something better is going to come out of it. But from where I'm sitting, South Africans are aware, they know this ANC, that it is the ANC that has brought disaster.